So just broadening the topic out. So is that still the case that you're finding that at the moment during this lockdown? And is it an issue that's likely to increase as people get frustrated, bored?
The figures that we've got show that the number of mental health cases is roughly on a par for where it should be. So it's not increased. My fear would be the longer the lockdown goes on, the more it's likely to increase. And understandably, people are anxious and people are afraid, and people who have poor mental health will be even more anxious and even more afraid. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with between the police and the mental health service and a number of other parts of the public service to put in place support. And I'm convinced that if people need the support is there. But this will have a toll on people's mental health in the long term, and that's something that sadly is a price that we have to pay.
Thank you.
Just before we move on, I've been told apparently we've got some issues with the live streaming today. But people, please don't worry, because it is all being recorded and it will go up online, so people will be able to watch this back. But the technical gremlins are with us this afternoon, I believe. And at that point, it moves me nicely onto you, Paul, from MTTV.
It's because, David, you're a ratings winner that people will be watching you back. There
may be many reasons, but I don't think that's one of them, Paul.
Okay, can I speak to the Chief Constable, please?
Of course.
If you don't mind, and I'm very delighted he's here, because we've been asking you for a little bit. I'm sure you're aware that we keep asking. Yeah. Chief, you put this tweet up, which was quite interesting, about the 40-mile-an-hour limit thing, saying there's been less crashes and that sort of thing. But surely, I mean, I think everyone has said the same thing to me. The fact is that there's less cars on the road, aren't there? So it's not really necessarily because of the 40-mile-an-hour limit, is it? Or do you believe it is?
Well, I think within an hour or so of the 40-mile-an-hour limit becoming effective, somebody rolled their car off the mountain when they were drunk. So that had nothing to do with less traffic on the road. That was to do with the way somebody was driving. And less traffic on the roads sometimes gives some people a chance to go faster. And so what we find, for example, in TT is if there's lots and lots of traffic on the road, there are fewer collisions. If there are gaps in the traffic, people go fast and crash. So the 40-mile-an-hour limit is a public safety thing, and it's there to take the pressure off the emergency department and the ITU. It's as simple as that. There's no hidden ulterior motive here to create a 40-mile-an-hour limit across the island after this emergency is over, because limits are no use unless you can enforce them in the long term. But for now, it's absolutely the right thing to do, irrespective of what the volume of traffic is on the road.
Okay, and picking up on being a policing by consensus, the Chief, from the very word go, the Chief Minister was saying that if this social isolating didn't work, he wouldn't hold back from increasing powers, whatever that exactly means. Are you in favour of that? Is it even possible to lock the population down if that was the next step?
The matter of powers is a matter for politicians. Politicians decide what powers the police have, and the police, whether we like it or not, will enforce those powers. So if the politicians said it's illegal to wear brown shoes, then I might shrug my shoulders and we'd get on and enforce the law and stop people wearing brown shoes. But in this health emergency that we're in now, enforcement can only take you so far. People have to realise that this is a health thing that can affect them and their loved ones. So if they gather in groups and one of them's infected, they might take that home and kill their grandmother. That's the top and bottom of this. So as big as the Isle of Man is in comparative size and the few number of officers I've got, we can't be everywhere all the time. So we rely on the public to do their best. And my guess is that 90-odd% of people do the right things all the time. If anybody chooses not to, then they run the risk of finding themselves in prison. And if that's what they want to do, fine. But the greater risk is they'll infect their family and harm them. So, if people want to take that risk, it doesn't matter what the laws. You could have the most draconian laws in the world, but people like that wouldn't obey them anyway.
Okay, before we just speak, could I just ask, how many people have you fined or given instant fines to yet? Any or many?
Well, we haven't quite got the powers yet. The powers are rumbling their way through. Royal assent was needed for some part of the primary legislation, and that hasn't yet been there. The regime to issue fixed penalty notices has been created in record time. When we did enforceable fixed penalty notices for road traffic matters, it took us about 2 years to get the regime up and running. We've done this regime in a couple of weeks, but we just need the final bit of the law to be in place. So I think next week we'll be able to do that. I hope that won't come to that. But if it does, we won't be afraid to use them.
Thank you.
Just to expand on that, people will probably be aware that the bill went through the branches last week in record time, actually, for a bill. We did it in a single sitting, both in House of Keys and in Legislative Council. So it has now gone off for royal assent, and we're just waiting for the Privy Council to confirm that the governor can put royal assent to the bill. At that point, then the powers will come in. So next up, I have the BBC and Alex.
Hello, Minister.
Hi, Alex.
Can we just get some clarity over it? We had a press release, as I'm sure everybody else did this afternoon, the Villa Gaiety would be closed until the end of September. Behind that decision until that date.
Right, well, I know it's always tempting as announcements are made now to read a lot into them, to literally the Villa and Gaiety planning ahead. We are likely to have cases in the community, even if there are low-level cases, for a substantial period of time. It's not because there's been any great medical decision as to when we're going to be locked down till, or when we're going to bring services back online. That has purely been taken by the Villa and Gaiety complex, who decide that realistically, in terms of shows and the stuff that they've got booked ahead, they're not going to be able to be back up and running until that time. So it's been a commercial decision on part of them. What we've got to remember as well is a lot of what goes on in the Villa and Gaiety is actually from bringing people into the island. So there's a lot of people who come from the UK to run the shows, etc. So they've got to look at what's going on in other areas and other jurisdictions as well. And I think the decision's been made that a lot of the shows that hadn't already cancelled up to that period, they wouldn't be able to go ahead because they wouldn't be able to get the performers in place because of what's happening in other jurisdictions. So no, people shouldn't read anything directly into that announcement today. That doesn't mean we're going to stay in lockdown until September, October, but equally it doesn't mean that there's some secret plan for rephrasing things and opening them. That will all be done on clinical
advice. I think I did
advice.
set some hairs running. Thank you. Can we speak to the Chief Constable, please?
Of course.
Thank you. Afternoon.
Hi, Alex.
Could we just expand a little more on that figure about the domestic abuse incidents, please? Because that's a real increase, 71%. I believe you said there are going to be people who are in difficult family situations, shall we say, perhaps partners, children, members of the family unit who are facing abuse, who outside of this might have had an avenue at least to escape from. Now they're stuck inside with these people. These are real situations. What advice are you giving to those today?
It's a very difficult situation, and I recognise very well how you describe that. I sit on the safeguarding board as well, and from a safeguarding perspective, this health emergency presents all sorts of people do not necessarily have the escape routes that they would normally have. They do not have the ways of getting out and away from abusive partners, and there has to be a means for them to share what they're going through. And we would encourage anyone, if they have the opportunity and they are in those situations, to contact us or contact any other support services like Victim Support or the Women's Refuge, because it will be a very trying time, this, and we're in this for a while yet, I think, and we have to make sure that people know that the help is there for them if the opportunity arises. So it's difficult, and I'm not offering a very easy way out for people in this, but they need to know that if they can, we will come and respond and do everything we can to safeguard them and protect them.
Thank you.
And she's waited very patiently till the end, but last but not least, we have Leanne from 3FM.
Thank you. Hi, Minister. Hope you're well.
Hello, Leanne. I'm absolutely fine.
Good. My first question is to yourself. What checks are being done with those who are presumed recovered? Because obviously we're seeing those figures now.
So there's no checks done. We work off the same basis as the World Health Organization definition for recovered, which is someone who's gone through 14 days. So they've gone through their 14-day period. They've not been back in touch to say they've deteriorated, and therefore they're presumed recovered. Where I think there's been some confusion online is people are saying, well, is that different to the way other jurisdictions are doing it? While there are some jurisdictions that do sample testing and so on, there is no jurisdiction around the world I can find that retests everyone to see whether they're cured or not. In fact, I'm not even aware of a test that would be able to do that. The difference is we are using the precise medical term, which is presumed recovered, whereas a lot of countries just report it as recovered. So if people go online and look at the World Health Organization's figures, they'll see columns for recovered for various countries. Most of those countries are calculating it in exactly the same way we are.
Okay, and my second question for the Chief Constable, please. Hi, Chief Constable. I just wondered if you could provide me with some clarity. We've got quite a lot of queries on what forms of ID key workers need to have on them if they're stopped and asked why they're travelling.
So some key workers have got identification. So if you work at the hospital, you'll have identification. Some charities have been in discussion with us and they're having letters that they're going to display in their vehicles. We will take a flexible approach. So whatever people provide us, we'll take. Just as by way of illustration, last weekend, one of my officers spent time in Crosby and stopped a lot of traffic over a period of about an hour or so. And he found that something like 95% of people were out for the right reasons. And so people who are not out for the right reasons, we'll deal with. People need to be as pragmatic as we are. So if you work at the hospital, you've got ID. If you work in Tesco, you'll have a Tesco badge of some description. That for us will be enough.
Okay, thank you.
Well, can I take the opportunity to thank the Chief Constable for coming on? Oh, sorry, there's an extra question from you, Chris.
Yeah, just one more for the Chief Constable before he leaves, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
You're in demand this afternoon.
And I'm getting my 10,000 steps in just walking backwards and forwards here. Right?
I just wanted to know if there was a particular demographic which appears to be flouting the social distancing rules that you've noticed so far.
We put a social media post out last week where we talked about young people, and I think the biggest issue we've got is with teenagers and people around the late teens, early 20s who seem to think that the rules don't apply to them. When I was driving down to government office here before from my office, I spoke to a group of 4 who were at the end of Tynwell Street. So I think it is that demographic, it is that set of younger people who probably feel immune to this. They probably feel that they're not vulnerable because they're fit and well, and they've read things that say that this only applies to elderly people. Well, it doesn't. And even if it did, as I said earlier, they'll be taking the virus back to their grandparents and killing them if it works out badly. So that's the group we have to get the message across to, I think.
And in that case, if you stop them, do you take them back to their respective houses? Do you tell their parents to monitor them more closely, or what can you actually do?
Well, if they're older teenagers, we can't. The parents have got nothing to do with it. But we've had dialogue within my team about our approach to parents, and I think we'll reach the stage if that demographic, if that group of young people doesn't change its approach, where we will start holding the parents to account. Because as hard as it is with teenagers, you do have to know where they are. And recently, Castletown Town Commissioners closed Coulson Park, I think, because they were concerned about young people gathering in the park at night. Well, their parents need to know where they are because they can't be out because they're breaking the law. It's as simple as that.
Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Just before I take the additional question from Paul, just to add to that, young people most certainly aren't immune, and it's important that we get the message across that they aren't. In the UK, of course, they have tragically seen the death of a 15-year-old, which is their youngest victim. So it is important to re-emphasise that message again, that young people are not immune from this virus. It is a horrendous disease and it affects all of us throughout our community. So Paul for another question next, then Sam, and then Tim.
Thank you, David. It's for you, actually. David,
So,
for you,
it's for me. Oh, it's for me. I'm
is-
popular again.
Well, I have to ask you a question. How is the Chief Constable? Have you spoken to him today? And when is he likely to get that text message to say he has or hasn't got it? Because obviously the reporting times changed day
Well,
by day.
I'm hoping you meant Chief Minister, not Chief Constable, first of all, Paul, since
Chief
the
Minister.
Chief Constable
Sorry, Chief
is
Minister.
here with me, and you're telling him something he doesn't know. In relation to the Chief Minister had his tests done in the same way that everyone else does. It has gone off for processing and it will come back in due course. We touched on this yesterday. There's been no special treatment for the Chief Minister. He will be in the processing queue along with everyone else awaiting it back. But the important thing to emphasise is regardless of whether the test result comes back as positive or negative, the Chief Minister will still be required to self-isolate just like everyone else for the 14-day period. He is absolutely fine. I spoke to him this morning and also throughout. I've been in contact with him throughout the day. He chaired the National Strategy Group remotely this morning via video link, just as we're chatting now. And he's showing the signs of the cough and the fever, but he is running the Isle of Man government as normal. Okay, Sam next, and then Tim.
Paul actually stole my thunder a little bit there. Actually, could I go to the Chief Constable again?
Of course.
Again. I just wonder if you could just perhaps give a bit of an idea in terms of you said about the figure of officers who are off. In terms of percentage, is that frontline officers or is that more office staff? And just to give an idea of what percentage that you've had to adapt to.
We've actually got a higher percentage of our support staff off than we have of police officers. I think the last figures I saw said we're about 14% absent, which is okay. So we've used a planning model that was set out a couple of months ago by the National Police Chiefs Council in England, which gave us a red, green, amber, red, black set of circumstances. We lapsed briefly into amber because we had 30 odd people off. We're now where we ought to be. We've still got about 4 special constables who are working with us on a daily basis just to make sure the numbers are right. But our projections show that as we get into next week, we'll be absolutely fully staffed, I think.
Thank you.
And then last question of the day goes to Tim.
And it is to your good self. Since this morning's update and this afternoon's, it's great, no more confirmed cases, but I work it out that we've only had 2 more tests back since this morning. Is there a pattern of when we get the tests back to the island, or is it just very random?
It literally depends upon the labs. Obviously, it will be a lot more of a pattern when we've got the testing facility here on island. But as you would expect, and you've got to appreciate in the UK, the labs are under pressure. They're dealing with 16,000 plus tests a day. They're not just processing our tests, they're processing tests in the Channel Islands, the high volume of testing in the UK that's increasing now. They've gone back to community testing, which we never gave up. So it can vary. And I wouldn't read too much into the individual numbers on a daily basis. I think what's important is we look over a period of time, and that's what I keep emphasising because I do get people who get in touch with me and say, "Oh, that's excellent. There's only 2 more confirmed cases today. It's going away." And I always stress to people we need to take a long-term picture at this. We can't just look at it with individual days at a time. We need to be taking a look at weeks at a time to see any trend data. So can I thank the Chief Constable for coming along today? I'm sure it's been very informative for people. So thank you very much, Chief Constable. I would also like to add my thanks for all that the emergency services are doing at this time. As Minister for Health and Social Care, I normally thank the ambulance service for all they are doing, but of course our emergency services are much wider than that. They really are our frontline community defence against this virus. So one of the things I would stress is please treat them with dignity and respect. If you see police officers out and about, if they stop you to speak to you, please at all times treat them with dignity and respect. They have a job to do and they are there for our protection and our safety. I would like to end with a round off of some shout outs. So the first one today goes to the People of Peel Support Group. This valued community organisation has been in existence since 2011 and has almost 2,000 members. It offers a wide range of help and information for our friends in the west of the island. The group is currently providing online pilot classes, some uplifting photographs, the new opening times for the post office and details of delivery services offered by local restaurants. One particularly eye-catching image is a picture taken at Peel Promenade yesterday afternoon that caught my eye at 3 p.m. On a lovely sunny day, Peel Promenade was deserted. Nobody was out. Everyone was staying at home and saving lives. So well done to the people of Peel. Our second shout out goes to Corinthians Football Club, which has donated the magnificent sum of £1,000 to Isle of Man Food Bank. The club made the donation to support those in need and to raise awareness of those requiring help during these difficult times using the hashtag #BeKind. The food bank is grateful for the club's support and is hoping that we can all show COVID-19 the red card very soon. Another nomination for a shout out has come from a pregnant woman whose husband is employed at the power station. He is working long shifts while continuing to support his wife and their disabled son. He is her hero, along with the team at Manx Utilities at the power station who are helping to keep the island running. I would also like to give a shout out to all those with the youth service who have been helping deliver the courier across the island. Many in our community don't have or can't use the internet access and so still rely on our print media. So thank you to all those helping to keep those residents informed. Also, as Minister for Health and Social Care, I'd like to personally thank the housekeeping service across all of the department's estates for all they're doing in continuing to work as diligently as ever during this difficult time. The work they are all undertaking is appreciated, and I want to say thank you to them again for today for that. So thank you to all these people, to everyone else who is rising to the challenge on behalf of our nation. In finishing, we have a short video clip for you. I know that many viewers have found the videos featuring our health and social care colleagues and the people in the community who are keeping the island moving to be powerful and inspiring. The following clip highlights the vital contribution made by our emergency workers. Please take a moment to watch the video and reflect on the important messages. I will be back tomorrow and I will be joined by the mental health services, which will be the focus of that briefing. And I leave you now with the video clip. Thank you.
Coronavirus has impacted the way that we live and interact as a community.
And it means we're asking you to help us.
To help our community.
From emergency services
to manning call centres.
From community testing
to being there for you when you need us.
We are working hard to keep our island safe at this challenging time.
We're all in this together.
For your island, for your community, please stay at home.
For your island, for your community, please stay at home.
For your island, for your community, please stay at home.
For your island, for your community, please stay at home.
For your island, for your community, please stay at home.
For your island, for your community, please stay at home.